In my time here at Millbrook, I've come to recognize that all of you have something to bring to the table. But because we're in high school, it can get especially overwhelming at times. And we can sometimes take the people around us and even ourselves for granted. We forget that we live in a community with around 400 people that each have their own unique story. This is a talk about all of you, for all of you, students and teachers alike. I'm going to be sharing two stories with you tonight. Both stories are about two of my closest friends here at Millbrook. I'm grateful to them both for allowing me to share their stories with me and all of you today. I chose these two people and the stories that came with them because I think that you all could relate to them most. Justinas Norkas is an international student from Lithuania. We were first introduced my fourth form year when we found out that we were going to be roommates. I still remember running into him on the sidewalk next to Burton on move-in day. Me looking up at him very much looking down on me. At first, we did not like each other. I just saw him as a kid from Lithuania, here to play basketball, and I think he just saw me as some small, half Asian, half Italian kid here to not play basketball. I didn't know who this guy was, but what I did know was that I had a roommate situation where neither one of us could bear to take the trash out, decide when to turn off the lights, clean the room, use headphones at night, or how to coordinate our alarms in the morning so we didn't wake each other up. We argued constantly. At the time, I just did this. At the time, I didn't see what he brought to the table. However, all this changed when Mr. Whiting forced us to get some hazmat suits and clean our room. It was 3 weeks into the school year, and we hadn't even unpacked yet. I don't even remember how that happened, but it just did. Cleaning and unpacking the room took a few hours, so it actually gave us a chance to talk and actually get to know each other. Justinas told me about his life before Millbrook. He told me a story about his life back in Lithuania and what life was like for him over there. While living there, as you can imagine, he played basketball pretty competitively. He explained that he would always compare himself to the best player, not to become him, but actually to evaluate his skills and use them for his own good, to be better, to make himself better. The way basketball works in Lithuania is there are two teams for every age group. The first team consists of the best players. The second team consists of everybody else. One day, Justinas sustained a pretty significant injury. The coach on the first team demoted him to the second team because he felt that because of the injury, he would not play as well as the others. This was a big downfall for Justinas. It made him feel like he wasn't good enough for basketball. In fact, perhaps this wasn't even his sport, and he should quit and do something else. Thanks to his support from his friends and family, Justinas realized that an injury didn't mean that your skills didn't just suddenly disappear. Half a year later, the second team went to finals and actually beat the first team. Millbrook took notice and recruited Justinas to come here. If we had not become roommates, had we not been forced to clean our room together, I would have probably never spoken a word to Justinas, ever. I would not have seen him for the extremely talented guy he is, and I would have missed out on knowing a really great person. This caused me to reflect. People sometimes go off their first outer impressions of you, and sometimes we forget that we all have some pretty meaningful backstories. I made a snap judgment about a person, and my first impression was just plain wrong. What else was I missing? Who else was I misjudging? For those of you who couldn't relate in some way to Justinas' story, I think you'll relate to this one. The second story I'll be sharing with you tonight is about Lars Heidenreich. We've known each other since middle school. We're best friends. However, for this story to make sense, you do need to have some context. As some of you may or may not know, like many of you sitting here in the room today, Lars has ADHD. Now, this is in no way a bad thing, but it can sometimes affect one's ability to focus, pay attention, or put effort into schoolwork. This brings us to Millbrook. Lars and I both arrived here our sophomore year, and we already knew many of the students here. We also shared a number of the same classes together. Now, the thing is that sometimes in class, he wouldn't get something, or would be a bit rambunctious. And I would say things like, wait, you wouldn't understand, dude. Or, man, you're dumb. Come on, really? At the time, even as best friend, I don't think that I was able to see all the great things that he really had to bring to the table. Now, this was all said in a joking kind of way. But a big part of this was I didn't really understand that But a big part of this was that I wasn't the only one saying these things. All of us have definitely said things like this to our friends, and actually even ourselves. But here's the thing. I didn't understand that if you tell someone something enough times, even if you're joking, it really has an impact. The things that you say and do matter. Over time, I think Lars really came to be affected by it, and almost believe it himself. Then I realized that it wasn't just him. A lot of people here, myself included, can sometimes really be affected by that kind of judgment. Ever since, I've made it a point to try and push people up rather than down. I'm a human. I make mistakes. I'll continue to do so. But the best thing we can do is strive to be our better selves and help others to be their better self. I've come to acknowledge that Lars brings a lot to the table. He's very smart and very talented. I mean, really, you just saw what he did. Like, him and Izzy, that is what embodies Millbrook. I know that people aren't black and white, but sometimes it's easier to make them seem that way. What Millbrook has done for me is made me realize that the easier way isn't always the best way. I think that it is worth the time to get caught up in the gray, to spend the energy to get to know every one of you, and continue to have that kind of attitude after Millbrook. This will be my 3rd year at Millbrook, and my only regret is that I haven't gotten a chance to know everyone here, at least not as well as I could have. I hope that this year I can change that. And if I haven't spoken to you before and I suddenly start, this would be why. And this is also my challenge to you. Get to know somebody you haven't spoken to before. I know many of us don't like it, but this is actually a pretty cool thing about formal dinner. Right there are 8 people that you might not have ever spoken to before. There's so many chances to do this here at Millbrook. And I think it comes down to the little things, like saying hi for the first time, asking how someone's doing, and actually meaning it, and not just saying, hey, how you doing? Oh, pretty good. Ultimately, I hope that you learn that all of you, and the person next to you, have a backstory and a lot to bring to the table. We're fortunate to be in such a great community filled with about 400 people that you can learn from, and whose company you can just enjoy. Just make sure that you're careful with judgments, and that you maintain the integrity of the process in getting to know someone. Each and every one of us has a backstory, and we're all works in progress. Thank you.